Hey everybody, I got to preference this video with a little bit of a forward and just basically an announcement. I'm glad that all of you guys watch my videos, and I do them really out of my love of my heart for Zoo. There's no doubt in my brain that, or my body, that I love to play Zoo, and that's the reason why I play it. However, I have been starting to get like a little bit of an inkling of I want to do this at a higher level than Cockatrice. Cockatrice is free, and the reason why I used it in the first place was it was very good at testing. I came from Legacy. I had all of my Zoo cards. It basically took me to sell off my entire standard collection and even some like stuff that I was getting from draft, as well as to do smart trades in order to actually get up to what happened for me with Modern. But the truth is this: I would really like to go to Magic Online. Now, that transition's a little bit hard. I'd either have to sell my paper stuff, which I'm not really willing to do, just because I like the face-to-face interaction that I get. Not to mention, all my cards are altered in pumpkin faces, and I don't want to get rid of them because of that. But it's also, I do eventually hope to go to like GPs and whatnot with it. I've just been in sort of an area, Savannah, Georgia, where I just can't get to them easily. That will be rectified about next year when I will start actually preparing for a lot of mainstream tournaments when I'm back in Philadelphia. But here's a little bit of an issue. And the issue is this. I'd like to get to Magic Online, but it would mean that I'd have to repurchase my deck in Pixel, something that I'm willing to still throw money at, but it's hard when I'm only making about $100 a week. I'm a freelance writer, if you guys didn't know. I do screenwriting, and while ghostwriting pays the bills right now and gets me and my dog fed, it's not paying super well. Until I'm about 30, it's just not going to really realistically work out as well as I'd like it to. So if you guys want me to keep making videos, I am sorry to say that it's going to really need to still be on Cockatrice until I can get a functional deck on Magic the Gathering Online. This is where you come in. If you'd like to speed up the process of helping me get this together, that's not just something that's like Curd Apes, Loom Lions, Wild Noctilles, and I can't afford Goyfs or Fetch Lands or Shocks, so it's like a really gimped version of the deck, then it's going to be hard for me to do it quickly. You guys can, if you can, let me either A, borrow cards, or B, give me any of the cards that you guys might have extra, even if it's just something like as simple as one Fetch Land. It might eventually help me to put together within, rather than taking 6 months to a year to slowly put together this Zoo deck. It could take me 3 to 4 months instead, or maybe even less than that, depending on how generous people are. And I'm not expecting anyone to actually be like, okay, yeah, let me help them out. I really don't. And I'll just keep making the videos on Cockatrice at that point. You're not going to be missing videos. It's just you're going to be looking at videos that might be less quality. I do have to spend a lot of the time of my day when I'm editing these videos finding good matches to show you guys, as well as ones that don't just end in rage quits after game 1. I would love to start doing some 8-mans or dailies to show you guys how I run through it and every thought process that goes on a higher level of Magic play. I would love to start using like cards that are actually meaningful and are not just subbing out against people who actually put a lot of thought into their ideas of what to do because they're paying for these cards. Stuff that has higher stakes and will probably lead me into making better plays and not being sloppy because I have to do it. And it would also open up some other things too, where I could like do some budget versions of Zoo and see how that works in a competitive environment by actually playing a budget version of Zoo in a competitive environment. And I can also document, some things that I'd like to do is document how I went from 0 to hero in forms of Tarmogoyf or 0-0 and having Zoo. And these are all things that I plan on doing as I can, but the time frame might be too long for what you're thinking about. It might actually take me a year to get this situated, since I do have student debts that number into the 10,000s. So it might take me a really, really long time. And if you guys would like to see me rock the Zoo deck and try to help you guys out a bit more, then really throw me a message or comment on the YouTube video. Talk to me at some point. You can catch me up on Magic the Gathering. And that's really the best way you can go about talking to me and see what can maybe be done. that's my preference. That's it. We're going to move on already to this video to showing you guys what I'm doing with Zoo currently, at least on Cockatrice. Thanks for listening. Hey there, guys. So there have been some questions as to what I'm doing with Small Zoo lately after the Port Richmond GP. And the answer is not much different. Twin's gotten better, so I have changed the main board up a bit to reflect this. Changed the sideboard a bit to reflect some of the oncoming changes that I think we will end up seeing for the meta. But overall, I don't think the while I do think the GP Richmond showed off the meta of Modern, it showed off really like just how wide the diversity is. I don't think it actually showed off what the die-hard meta is. Star City Games didn't do like the best job in the world showing what the breakdown was, but for day 2, there was like something ridiculous like 25 to 30 archetypes being covered, and some of them that were like rogue archetypes, like even like 8-rack having like a strong 1% showing, which in a pool of like 400 people that qualified into day 2, that's a huge amount. I think it just goes to show that like there's a lot of things happening, and because of that, I don't think, and because of the fact that Zoo was not all it was cracked up to be, or so says people, you end up seeing a drop-off in it. Plus, I think a lot of people are misguided thinking that Big Zoo is the king of all zoos. It's not. It's just it beats other zoo. That being said, we watched how Big Zoo did not really do that well this, and actually Small Zoo almost seemingly did better. If you look down at the meta breakdown, you see that like a lot of big zoos did not make it into day 2, but almost all of the small zoos that were actually repping Small Zoo did make it into day 2, and that's because I think you have the ability to race combo, and that's not something that mid-range Zoo can really open up about. Not only that, but as Jund is getting better, I think mid-range Zoo is just not your choice, because Jund basically does what mid-range Zoo does, but just better. That being said, let's just talk about what I've been doing. So what I've noticed from GP Richmond is this. Gore Clan Rampager is a must. You cannot get around Gore Clan Rampager. It is a strong 4 in the Small Zoo core now. The reasons why is because, well, aside from the fact that if people throw up a wall and think it's going to stop you, Gore Clan Rampager basically says no to that. Gore Clan Rampager loves to trample over a Spellskite. It's one of his favorite things to do. But if there's anything to take note of it, it's that chump blockers against Zoo with Gore Clan Rampager does not work. Bolting during attack phases does not work. Unless they wait for you to Gore Clan Rampager, in which case you just don't do it. That Birds of Paradise and things that going on trying to get in the way does not work. Big blockers like Wiltleaf or Tarmogoyfs or even Scavengers do not work. Any sort of tokens do not work. It's also against the mirror. If you've got a Gore Clan Rampager, using your Noctail to block a create will not work. Gore Clan Rampager just simply does everything, but there's also something else that it does that I don't think people really realize. And against combo, it's basically a 2-mana 4-damage burn spell. It's huge in that respect. Against control, it's a little bit less good because they always want a 2-for-1 but on the upside, you're looking at a huge pump spell that you could use if you need to, but if you don't need to, it's a 4/4 trampling body, which survives Bolt, and that means that it lives against combo. It lives against control for a long time. It's just, you end up hard casting it. And really, realistically, you do end up hard casting this guy anywhere from 40 to 60%. It's not nearly as much as you think it is, like, well, I just am going to do a pump. He also pumps, he's a reliable pump for Tarmogoyf. People don't realize that he does buff Tarmogoyf if there's no creature in the yard yet. So he does like a ton of roles. He's very, very versatile, and I think if you're not playing 4, if you're playing like a Domain Zoo and you're only playing 2 of or 3 of, you really need to bump up to 4. There's just so many blockers in the meta. There's so many combo decks in the meta, and this guy helps you like hit a ton more extra damage. And he just simply says, my creature's gonna live. They're gonna not only live, but they're going to still keep doing damage to you. You're not gonna have blockers. And even if you didn't have them, I'm still going to do 4 damage to the face to you, or I'm just going to cast him and do repeatable 4 damage to the face with you. He's pretty much the king of everything he needs to do. Going down here, I've got Knight of the Reliquary at my 4-drop. I was playing a lot around with switching up to Domain Zoo, but I found that the mana base just simply killed me. It flat out killed me. Domain Zoo is really, really good against a meta that's like Storm, where they like are going to just kill you on one big instant boom. But against Twin, it's not, because they either play a tempo or a mid-range Twin, and they'll beat down with their little creatures, and you're opening up an avenue of attack for them to kill you, sans comboing off, that did not exist before if you're just playing Nyazu. Likewise, you lose to like a general mid-range like Jund, because when they stabilize, they really don't have that much more damage they need to do to you in order to kill you. Or like tempo decks like Delver just can kill you easier because you're basically doing a lot of legwork for them by burning yourself. Now, yes, you can crack sort of like conservatively, but then you're slowing yourself down, and I think that's pretty bad. So the reason why I'm saying Knight of the Reliquary over Geist of St. Taft, which is what I was getting at with that, Geist of St. Taft was what I was touching, is that Geist is really good, especially when you're running Gore Clan Rampager. But in the Domain Zoos, I hate to say it, but there's really only 2 cards that make it worth going into, now that there's no Deathrite Shaman or anything that I'm getting extra buffs from. And the 2 cards would be Geist of St. Taft and Tribal Flames. Tribal Flame does have an equivalent of Boros Charm, with the upside that Boros Charm can also protect my creatures and gain double strike, which is just nuts when you actually use Gore Clan Rampager with it. But also, Knight of the Reliquary can do the same deal as Geist. Knight's basically a bad Geist for 2 turns and then becomes way better than Geist could ever hope to be. And the reason why is because simply you just want a big beater sometimes, and Knight of the Reliquary does that. It's bigger than Smiter even. There's not nearly enough control or Jund that I would justify Smiter over Knight. Plus the ability to take up this Kessig Wolf Run, which a lot of people haven't done yet. Yes, it is one colorless land, and it can lead to a bad land. But it's also helped me win the game, or just ensure game wins with it. There have been times against Control that I've landed a Knight, and instead of attacking like they thought I would crack or use the Knight to grab myself a Kessig Wolf Run, which basically then says, for the rest of this game, I am going to threaten you even with my worst creatures. My worst creatures can still kill you. You notice that I also have the only difference that I've had prior is 2 Scavenging Ooze. With the rise of things like Living End, Storm is a huge one, and a lot of decks that use the graveyard very liberally, including Pod. Scavenging Ooze becomes a very, very good card. Note that I've cut E1 out of the deck. I have cut E1 out of the deck to fit 2 Scavenging Ooze and buff my Loon Lions up to 4 in response to that. And there's a reason why for that. Scavenging Ooze becomes a lot better when I'm not playing E1, just because I don't have to worry about the Evolve trigger anymore. And aside from that, Scavenging Ooze basically, as a 2-of, can supplement my Tarmogoyf and become a big beater. It's a source of life gain, which isn't super relevant in our deck, but the Grave Hate ability is relevant, and you'll see that I've cut some Grave Hate in my side to get myself a better game against mid-range, because Jund is starting to become bigger. That is one of the predictions I'm making, is that within only a few weeks from now to a month to when the next GP is, you'll find that Jund has become a huge, huge, huge thing. It has the ability to become really good, whether it goes down the rock route and becomes more all about like things like Obliviator, or whether it goes down the Corsair route, which I think is better personally. Yeah, it's a less awkward mana base, and I say less awkward because if you got 1 green source and 3 black sources and you get an Obliviator, it's pretty bad. Yeah, I think that the Corsair is the bigger route, and Scavenging Ooze to eat some of their stuff's pretty big. Also, Snapcaster is a relevant target for Scavenging Ooze just on its own, because twin decks are getting bigger, and twin decks play Snapcaster Mage. Scavenging Ooze just becomes better as the meta has evolved a bit. Again, it's a little weird. I'm not totally happy of just only having 12 1-drops, but I am also kind of happy that I have 12 1-drops, and that's it. You'll see that I've got 4 Curt Apes, 4 Loom Lines, 4 Wild Noctils, and that's 12. Because then it says that I've got 12 1-drops, I then have 6 2-drops, 4 4-drops, and 4 3-drops. That's kind of nice because it allows me to really not die to engineered explosives at all. Like, someone engineered explosives me, I drop the Scavenging Ooze, suddenly I'm happy because I've got pretty much my attack power back. I've got another Reliquary, I've got Gorkclan Rampager, I've got Tarmogoyf. These are all things that just like, well, you can... I've got the early aggression, but probably if you've already used your engineered explosives to blow up 2 of my 1-drops, then you realize you've just wasted a turn or 2 turns and at least 3 mana. Meanwhile, I still have ways to kill you, and those guys have probably already did their job of doing some damage into you. It's just a bad trade. I would any day pay 2 mana to make the opponent tap out 3 mana and make them lose like 4 life. That's a great spell there, you know? And discard a card while they're at it too. Going down to the spells, you see that I have made a distinct change, and that is 4 Lightning Bolt, 4 Lightning Helix, and 4 Path to Exile. I can't get around it right now. I need the removal. I need the burn spells. The burn spells still help me in the fact that I can throw them to the face if I have to, but there's so much like affinity. There's so much pod that I need to actually hit their little dudes, and there's so much Path to Exile, or so many like things like Twin and Pod where I need to actually exile their spells. I can't get around it. You have to have 4 of these in probably your core. The 2 Boros Charm can still be flex spots, but I still like them because in a meta that is very, very combo, Boros Charm can just finish the game for you. It does 1 less damage than Tribal Flames does, but at a better mana cost. You're generally, even in Tribal Flames, you're generally going to try to get yourself a red and a white mana. So that you can Helix, because Helix is almost better in that deck and you need it in that deck than Tribal Flame. So we're just, rather than beat the dead horse up, you know, with a stick, just use Boros Charm. Use that fist pump. And I found that it's relevant against like Tron and Anger of the Gods, which still exists right now. It hasn't fully gone away. If Anger of the Gods went away and people start switching more to Pyroclasm because of affinity, then I would start taking out the Boros Charms. I would replace it with maybe 2 more creatures or something else like Arc Trail or something. Depends on how the meta goes. But currently Boros Charms is the best thing I can think of. The land's pretty much all the same since the last time I talked to you. Again, there's only Horizon Canopy and a Keswick Wolfrun as the trick lands. And the Horizon Canopy is not even that bad because late game, if you just naturally draw it, it's basically a cycler, which is great. It's good because then you can still get a burn spell and still win the game if you need to. Keswick Wolfrun is just extra. It could be, you know, sometimes you could think about doing Sinjiri Step because then it will null out a bolt or something. But I think Keswick Wolfrun's better because I don't want to push my mana base over to 3 trick lands, because then I'm actually looking at reliably having a hand with a trick land in it, and that's going to be bad for me. Talking about some sideboard stuff. To Gravedigger's Cage. For a while I was thinking about putting relics in instead of Gravedigger's Cage. I found that the pod matchup's actually getting better for us because they're taking out the second infinite life combo, meaning that we've got more of a chance to beat them up. Plus, things like Gorkclan Rampager just does a number on them. You've got so much early aggression that then they look at having to activate their pod and how it's going to hurt them in the long run, and it's worse for them, especially when you also go up to 4 like Path to Exiles. I found reliably that Gravedigger's Cage, while basically stops their deck from really functioning, it's things like Lightning Bolt, Lightning Helix, and Path to Exile that really finish them off. And Gorkclan Rampager. For what it's worth, I do have like 18 removal spells, because Gorkclan Rampager should count as a removal spell in that situation. And that just going removal overload on them is killer for them. You'll win the game as long as you stick 1 creature to attack with. So I thought about going to Relic of Progenitus because of some other decks that have popped up, especially since the GP, but fitting 2 Scavenging Ooze into my main deck, now that means that I've got more anti-graveyard hate, and Grafdigger's Cage just becomes a better choice for me. It's just because it still hits the worst matchup we've got, which is Pod. Like I said, the Pod matchup's getting better, but that doesn't mean that it's, like, amazing yet. I'm gonna skip. Let's just talk about Thrun. Thrun is there for a couple different reasons. I found that sometimes, because I don't have E1 and I'm not reliably evolving E1 anymore, that my games are gonna go a little grindy. So what is the Thrun for? Well, the Thrun is for a couple things. First, control. It's also versus mid-range like Jund, which has a ton of removal. It's also really good against aggro decks because you can regenerate it constantly. I wouldn't necessarily side it in against aggro decks because, like, maybe against a zoo that's just as fast as you if you're ending up being like a really hard control element. But I've actually started siding it against things like Hate Bears. Hate Bears has become more and more of a grindy matchup from the way they play with things like swords and engineered explosives and all that stuff. So Thrun becomes a better choice there because Thrun will win the grindy matchup. That's his job, is if the game starts going along, Thrun will come in and basically say, either you're not going to ever attack me and get away with it, or I'm just going to keep attacking into you with 4 damage that you can't bolt or anything, you know, you can't even removal spell it, and I'll just regenerate my Thrun. So in the mid-range matchup, Thrun becomes very, very good. It becomes like a late-game dark horse for you, especially against things like Jund that has removal overload, or Rock that has removal overload, against American Control, which again also has removal overload. Hate Bears, it's great in. Trying to think of anything off the top of my head. And that's probably all I would side in. I want the early aggression in against other aggro decks and other sort of decks. Thrun is also really good in the fact that against things, a weird matchup, Boggles, it becomes really good because it can just sit there and regenerate. As long as they don't get the lifelink stuff, it basically becomes an impassable wall, which is pretty cool. But that's the reason why I have Thrun. It's also really good against that control matchup because it just sits there and just wins the game. Likewise against the control matchup, but also good against tempo and combo is Choke. You gotta be careful when you side your Choke in because it's not against, like, you have this temptation to basically say, oh, I'm playing a blue deck, throw Choke in. And I've learned quickly that that's not the appropriate response. In Legacy it was, which is why I had that immediate thing. But in Legacy they play a lot less not dual lands than we do. They generally play mostly just a dual land game. Or even basic game where they get basic islands. But in Modern, fast lands, you know, there's no wasteland, so fast lands are fine, so are filter lands, all these things. So you might actually end up playing against a deck that Choke should beat and it doesn't. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. Against the Blue Moon deck, you play a Choke and you basically say, I'm going to win the game eventually now. Even if I don't have my own mana, I will draw my basics and then kill you. Against Control, it's the best. It's fantastic against American Control because you just cast it. And you have 2 different ways to cast Choke, you gotta remember. Choke can either be casted while they have open mana and say, alright, you got your open mana. Either you can counterspell this, and if you do, that kind of sucks, I lose a card, but whatever, that's parity. Or you can not counterspell it, in which case you have 1-use lands, is really what it is, and that's fantastic. You've got 1-use lands. It's even better than Blood Moon in some situations, because it basically will say that you eventually can't bolt me out. That in that situation it's cool. Or they tap out for something like, I've had people tap out against me for like Geist of St. Taft if they're doing the mid-range deck, and then I put a Choke out, and then they think, ooh, that's bad because he's got a Curd Ape that'll kill my Geist of St. Taft. I'm not untapping my lands, and this is just going to be bad for me. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes they'll Cryptic Command, even the control deck will Cryptic Command your creatures down, and then you go, that's fine, you're tapped out, Choke. Good luck playing the rest of the game. That's kind of what it feels like. Choke is almost as ragey as Blood Moon, but with the upside of being ragey only against the decks that you don't want them playing, and with the upside of you also being able to use your mana whenever you want to, for whatever you want to. So yeah, Choke's great. Choke's also good against some control decks, or combo decks I should say, and tempo decks. Like Delver it's great against, because they're really only going to have like maybe one not basic. It's great against any of their sort of Rug Delvers or any of that junk that uses Tarmogoyfs and whatnot, like Eternal Command. It's fantastic for them. You put it down, you win the game. It's good against certain control or combo decks too, like Twin. It's really good against, especially because they tap out for their tap creature, then they end up not having mana to cast a Splinter Twin. They're back to square one. Let me just list some decks that it's not good against so that you guys don't use it the wrong way. It's not good against Storm. Storm may have an 18 land count, but a lot of people have been favoring the 16 land count one. So yes, your thoughts may be, oh, if I put Choke down, I'm going to screw him. But then you realize you're not, because they play with 8 to 12 different methods of just not like things that just don't care about you putting down that. They use Sulfur Falls. They use in some cases Cascade Bluffs, and then they also use the Pain Land. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but the Pain Land that allows them to get red and blue. So Choke doesn't actually really do anything than stop one of their mana, and then aside from that, it really doesn't matter, because if you put down Choke into an untapped field, they're gonna go, that's fine, I'm not gonna use my mana until my turn that I kill you, and then in which case, once I do that, I've got 1,000,000 mana because of what is it called, Metamorphose and whatnot. It just doesn't matter. I'm still gonna win the game. That's like one of the decks that you don't want to play it against. Another one is like the White Prison deck. Yes, they do use Hollowed Fountains. Is it worth it? No. It's really, your main targets for Choke is going to be any of the Delver decks, any of the Tempo decks, Merfolk decks, any of the Mono Blue decks, any of the combo decks that really aren't Storm and aren't like 5 colors or 4 colors. Or any of that stuff. It's still only all right against like things like Gifts, because Gifts, if it's like a 4 to 5 color Gifts, Choke is only all right against them. It stops them for a little bit, but they eventually find a way around it, because they can tap for Gifts Ungiven, which only will cost them 1 blue source, and then aside from that, then what they're fetching and how they're reanimating is white and black, so it doesn't matter. Moving right along, the Ancient Grudge is for either any artifact deck. That includes things like Ad Nauseam, because you can hit their artifact stuff in order to break it. That's mana denial, and that's many ways that you can beat them. But also mostly for Affinity. There's no real way around it. Ancient Grudge is the kill card for Affinity. For Small Zoo, you can still use like Shatterstorm or Creeping Corrosion if you'd like, but this is cheaper on your mana base, because in Small Zoo, you really are only going to cast it for 2 on one turn and then 1 on the other turn. And it complements your already existing huge amount of removal suite, so that helps against the Affinity matchup. I still have 1 Boros Charm on the sideboard. I still, online, at least on Cockatrice, I still play enough control decks that it's worth mentioning, and there's still enough Anger the Gods that it's worth mentioning. And maybe Magic Online less so, because less people are willing to play Zoo on Magic Online. If it doesn't win and you're paying money for it, it's less fun. When you're playing Cockatrice, a lot of people will still play Zoo, just because it's a fun deck to play, and it's a little bit, not mindless. I wouldn't say it's mindless, because I would never say Zoo is mindless, but I would say that it's your decisions are a little easier, because generally your decision is to turn people sideways. Combust is there for Twin. It's also there for any of the Mono Blue decks. It's added removal for like Delver or Fae and things like Merfolk, while also being really good against any Restoration Angels or Restoration Controls that you might find. I wouldn't side it against Pod, because it's not that great against Pod, but I would side it against things like Hate Bears, because it's fantastic against Hate Bears. It becomes super Tribal Flames basically on Hate Bears, because you get rid of their Wilt Leaf thing in response to them trying to block your 4/4, and then you trade or something, and it's like really nice. Destructive Revelry, I still have 2 on my sideboard. I'm not gonna get rid of it anytime soon. I generally say that you want 3 artifact, 3 graveyard hates in your sideboard, anywhere around those numbers. And Destructive Revelry still does everything I want to do, which is hits them for some damage, kill. It covers both bases of being able to hit an artifact for things like Affinity Wall, also being able to hit boggles. And so there's a bunch, just a good all-around card to have in your sideboard. And the last one's a little weird. It's Mana Tith. I am running 2 Mana Tith. I'm not running on my main board. I don't want to run on my main board. I could run it over in my main board over Boros Charm if I wanted to, and just use it as like a Force Spike, or like almost as let me use it in a modern term, a Spell Pierce or a Dispel for you guys. It's very good in the respect that it can. You can, if you wanted to run it main board, you'll still have uses for it, but I prefer Boros Charm just because in the combo meta, and in a meta that has things like Jund where Mana Tith is not good against, it's nice to have Boros Charm on the main board because I can either, it's never bad. It's either amazing or it still does 4 damage and that's still really good. Mana Tith is not like that. Mana Tith is either awesome or it's not awesome. If you guys saw my video with the Storm deck, Mana Tith was pivotal there. He, I think, sided out any thoughts of a counter spell war in that Storm deck. Saw when I revealed my Mana Tith turn 0, was like, crap. He has a counter spell like it's so from left field. Now this guy is not gonna stay in my sideboard forever. As soon as the meta settles down, combo goes away a little bit, Mana Tith is gone. I'm not saying that it's a great card for a long-standing sideboard by any means. I am saying that it is fairly good right now. You can hit, like, you can counter any combo stuff, like, and it just blows them out of the water because they don't expect it, forces them back on their heels. Mana Tith is also it's extra padding against the combo matchup. It could be things like Spirit of the Labyrinth, or it could be things like either Sworn Canonist or Thalia or Gadok. But the combos in Modern are so vast right now, I can't have a narrow but powerful answer in my sideboard. If I run Thalia, that's good against Storm. I can even side it in against control decks, and even maybe against tempo decks. But then I lose to a twin deck. I just lose. I also then lose to a pod deck. I also lose to not that you'd side Mana Tith in versus pod or Thalia, but like I'm just saying I could lose to a mono green shrine deck then. There's a million different decks I could still technically lose to. But Mana Tith hits those just generally all of the decks. Now it doesn't kill it, but it's a speed bump, and that's usually enough for you to win, especially when you're just attacking with a bunch of small creatures, and they're waiting for their chance to, oops, I win, and they can't do it. So again, completely in the blind here, I'm just going to go ahead and play something for you guys with the deck that I described so that you guys can see how it works in just a totally blind vacuum meta. He's mulliganing, that's good for me. I always like seeing my opponents mulligan, especially when I have a solid hand. I got a 1-drop, 2-drop, and technically 3 and 4 drop here on the Gore Clan Rampager. These guys are pseudo removal if he plays anything and decides to block, so I'm not necessarily bad off. I'd love to see one of the Gore Clan Rampagers be like a lightning helix, a lightning bolt or something. It's not gonna kill me not to see it. So he's got a Scalding Tarn off the top. Getting a mountain. Does that mean he is burn deck? No, he's probably some kind of Alright, so he's probably some kind of like restore balance deck, which my hand isn't fantastic against. It's alright against, but it does mean that I'm going to basically try to do as much damage as I can right now. So that means Kurt Ape is going to go in there. Gore Clan Rampager does not tap. It does mean that I should probably get some damage in with Scavenging Ooze before I start Gore Clan Rampagering. But an idea that I could do is just hold my white here and keep the Scavenging Ooze in my hand. Depends on what I see him play. Because he's going to try to get rid of my lands. That's really what's going to kill me, if anything, is the fact that he's making me sack creatures as well as sack my lands. He's playing another land here. So that's actually fine for me, although it does mean that he can sacrifice his lands with, oh, but here I drew another land, so that's fine. I am going to start keeping some cards in my hand, though, at this point. There's no reason for me not to, especially if he sacrifices his lands to do it. Just going to go ahead here, give him a second to think about bolting my creature. If he doesn't do it, that's fine. If he's bolting it, I would be surprised, too, because that means he's got something up his sleeve. And I am going to put the Scavenging Ooze out here. Hopefully I do draw another 1-drop. That's something I want to see. I'm not going to put a land out here. I'm going to let him use his Greater Gorgon to kill his lands, and then me have a way to drop my lands out there, and still have a way to. It's sort of weird. I've got to be redundant against the against this deck. He's going to try to make me basically cast my creatures several times without having lands, so it's good to have extra lands in this hand. I'd actually would have been okay with having another land over Knight of the Reliquary, although if that Knight of the Reliquary was like Wild Noctil, that would be fantastic for me too. I don't think he's going to balance on my turn. He could balance on my turn, but usually they run like border posts. And if he does do a border post, that means I still get an extra turn to hit him. So I'm going to be hitting him for, depending on what I'm doing, I could hit him for 1, 2, plus 4 is 6, plus another 2 is 8, and then 9 with the eating my Gore Clan Rampager out of it. If I had another 2-drop in my hand like a Tarmogoyf or something, I would prefer that, because then I could have held the Scavenging Ooze, and when he wiped my board, I could eat everything with the Scavenging Ooze. Over time, that is. But at no point am I going to get to the time where I'm going to... I mean, does he want to get rid of his lands? He can get rid of his lands. But what does that do? I mean, it does basically say that he's going to have Gorgon coming out one of these days. But that Path to Exile is then huge in my hands. I'm not going to do the land thing because I still think he's restore balance. That makes it easier for me to do this. What is a Deceiver Etch Arch going? Fine. If he does not block, that means that I do have to have the Path Mana in case he's got some weird twin combo thing. So do I want to put the land down here then? That's weird that he's got a Deceiver Etch Arch. I'm just trying to think why he would do it, why he would have Deceiver Etch Arch. I think I still put the land down because I've got still access to white for my Path to Exile in my hand in case he restore balances on me. But I just don't see any reason why he wouldn't restore balance right then and there. Maybe he's not a restore balance deck. Maybe he's just a weird twin deck with the Greater Gorgon. Gargadon. It's pronounced Gargadon. You get that in the comments. Someone's gonna be like, dude, you should learn how to pronounce things. Mistveiled Plains? What are you, deck? I have no clue what you are. I'm gonna just not have any of the restore balance stuff in hand. I think he's a totally restore balance deck, though. I haven't seen him do a 1-drop. He's only had 3 drops so far. Okay, so he's suspending a Restore Balance? So he is a Restore Balance deck, then. But he has no way to stop my Scavenging Ooze next turn. So there's no reason for me not to crack this, or even a basic. Which I can do. I think I'm just gonna... Rather, because I might want to have still access to my white mana next turn. Or if he restores balance on me. I'm just gonna go ahead and eat the X-Arch. Because this is basically just going to maximize my damage out here. And you guys can see, like what I was saying against the... that's a good draw here. With Gore Clan Rampager. There's no reason for me to cast the Gore Clan Rampager into what could then become a Deceiver X-Arch. Or it could become a Restore Balance. So I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of my own dude right here. Gain a life. Not that that's really relevant. Add a counter, which is relevant. Attack. Then I'm gonna go ahead and Gore Clan Rampager my Curdape. Because it brings him down to kill range, and that's exactly what I need to have here. So at this point, I can top deck a Bolt whenever I want, and he's dead. That's exactly what I needed to do. It's turn 4 like normal. I just had to pressure him down to basically death. He could then just almost sack everything and get one of his Gore Clan Rampagers out if he wanted to. I don't know how he would. He would get down to 2 counters, but something he could do. You can also cast something for full price. That's something that this deck does do, is just cast whatever they're doing. Might be thinking about casting a blocker. A Johnny Vengeance, sure. And he could tap down my Ooze, but that would not let him win the game. He could kill my Curdape, which is fine. But then I still kill him on the swing. I mean, there ain't no reason for me to hit his Planeswalker. Got 0 reasons to do that. And that's what I thought. Sure. Alright, so what do we do in this matchup? Mana Tith becomes huge, because if I just Mana Tith out of nowhere, oh my god, that would be fantastic. This would be a great time to show the Mana Tith. Just be like, yeah, about that Mana Tith? You know, like, what? Why? Boros Charm doesn't actually do anything here, I don't think. I mean, it does a lot of damage, which is nice. I'm trying to think what he's got. He's got a Greater Gorgon. I didn't see any border posts, but I assume he has got border posts? It's weird that I didn't see any border posts and he was just basically going for land, so I'm not going to side in my artifact hate like I normally would. In fact, I think I side in Boros Charm and take out a Lightning Bolt. I actually might take out more than 1 Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolts are great here. Path to Exile I would need for the Greater Gorgon. There's just no ways around it. Plus I can also use it on my own creatures if I need to get the land. Gore Clan Rampager, it's basically dealing damage. Knight of the Reliquary is not actually that great here, because at no point in time do I want to put 3 mana on the field. So I think I'm going to take out the Knight of the Reliquaries, and that's going to mean I'm going to put in back my Bolt. None of this other stuff is that great, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep the Knight of the Reliquary in just one. Just the one of. This has got a Manatith hand, so yeah, let's try it. Keep. Hardcore keep. I would love, oh my god, I would love to see him try to restore balance into, like, tapped out land, and, like, sacrifice all of his lands in response to, you know, like, it happening, and then being like, yeah, Manatith to that. You have no lands now. I still have everything. Good game, good game. And this might be a great time to show off Manatith. And again, he's not going to do anything yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and pretend, like, just assume that my Manatith is going to take care of everything I need it to. And I'm going to put the Wild Noctowl out there. And I'm going to devote all my lands to the library, or to existing. I need at least 2 lands out there. And without any way to sack his lands, I actually don't mind. Oh, so there's the border post. He does have border posts. That isn't necessarily mine. This is, like I said, going all my way. So he's hopefully going to try to balance me next turn. And that is totally okay with that happening. I'm actually going to get another Temple Garden. No, I'm not going to get another Temple Garden. I am going to get a Sacred Foundry. So I'm going to put out Wild Noctowl here. I probably shouldn't have cracked my, my, what do you call it? My Arid Mesa, but I just didn't really care. I don't think he's going to be, like, expecting a Manatith. He might be expecting, like, a Bolt. But he is not expecting a Manatith whatsoever. So I'm hoping, I'm praying here that he's going to go ahead and be like, Argent Plea. Cascade. And I'm going to be like, that's totally okay. Cascade into that balance, please. I'm just going to keep this 1 mana up the rest of the game. There's no reason for me not to. At no point in time am I going to tap down that land. I may tap down this land. I may tap down this land if this land's untapped. But I'm not going to Windmill Slam. We're going to control our emotions here, even though I'm praying to God it happens. I'm praying it to God. We have out Wild Noctows. If he does nothing, we eventually win the game. Like, there is no question about it. Here's the start of combat. Do you want to do it? Do you want to do it, dude? Do you want to do it? Do it! Go ahead. Let's see what happens here. Nothing? Sure. I'm just going to swing. Come on. Come on. Do it. Do it. Cast a Cascade spell. Please. Please do it. Oh my god. Please do it. Come on. You got it. You got it. You got the win. Go for it. Go for the win. Go for the win. Do it, dude. Go for the win. Sure. Yeah, do it. Sack. Sack your lands. Sack them. Do it. Okay. Show me your deck. So he does have this weird Splinter Twin combo in there. I guess like another Oops I Win button, which is kind of cool. I would think March of the Machines is better, but I guess it's whatever. Yeah, he does not have the extra land, so yeah, it's a win. Unless he's got a Shimmying Spirit Guide, but so far we've seen 3. That would mean he'd have to have like a 4th in his hand, but the hope is that he does not have the 4th in his hand. Let's see, we're looking for another Shimmying Spirit Guide. I mean, we're still gonna have to cast it. There's no reason why we would not cast it. So if he has a Shimmying Spirit Guide in his hand, that's a possibility. But he has got 3 and still 24 cards left in his deck, so I think that's probably just a win there. I think he could just be flabbergasted in reading the card right now because no one knows what that card does. and it is a counterspell. In this case, it's a Force Spike. So if he shows me the whiff, you're back to square one with 0 lands, dog. Take your 6 damage, fool. That's gotta feel salty. That's gotta feel salty as hell. I'll be honest with you. That's gotta feel salty as hell. And we're gonna devote some more stuff to the right out here now, because we can. And I don't think he's gonna be able to recover fast enough. Even if he does have God draws with lands, we gotta. Let's see. I'm just looking at what we got in the graveyard here. 1, 2, 3. So our Tarmogoyf would be a 3/4. If he cracks this, he goes down to 10. We've got 8 damage. Which, that means it's lethal, regardless. Hold the bolt, or hold the path in my hand. Ain't no reason why I should play it. He's got no 1 mana cost spell, so I'm not worried about that either. Nothing's gonna, like, there's no ambush spider that's coming out. Ambush viper. Ambush viper. I loved that card limited. That card was awesome. Fucking loved it. And then we're just gonna bolt him for the win. Whoop! So that was the my current zoo deck in action. It's cool that I kind of got a win off my first real try. And I hope you guys enjoy the video, and that helps you understand a little bit about what zoo should be kind of at right now. Thanks for watching, and remember to feed the animals.